especially to our dear Bosconians, our dear lay mission partners, and our dear members of the Salesian family, and to you, all of you, dear friends. It's good to be back after some days of problem with connectivity. And I'd like to begin this reflection with a reading of the Gospel for this day. From the Gospel according to St. Luke. Someone in the crowd said to Jesus, "Teacher, tell my brother to share the inheritance with me." He replied to him, "Friend, who appointed me as your judge and arbitrator?" Then he said to the crowd, "Take care to guard against all greed, for though one may be rich, one's life does not consist of possessions." Then he told them a parable. There was a rich man whose land produced a bountiful harvest. He asked himself, "What shall I do? For I do not have space to store my harvest." And he said, "This is what I shall do. I shall tear down my barns and build larger ones. There I shall store all my grain and other goods. And I say to myself, now as for you, you have so many good things stored up for many years. Rest, eat, drink, be merry." But God said to him, "You fool, this night your life will be demanded of you, and the things you have prepared, to whom will they belong? Thus will it be for the one who stores up treasure for himself, but is not rich in what matters to God." The Gospel of the Lord. A few years ago, I made the reflection on this Gospel passage, and I entitled it, "To be Rich in God's Eyes." I'd like to give an excerpt of that. You know, the problem that was presented to Jesus was practical. Why? Because the man wanted a share of the inheritance of his brother, which apparently was not in the intention of the latter. Kadalasan nakikita natin to, no? It's a problem among families. Yung mana, yung pag-aari na ipapasa dun sa susunod na generation. And here we see that. And the man must have thought that the words of Jesus, the wise teacher, the wonder worker, the words have the power of convincing his brother. However, the words of Jesus were a less blunt way of saying no. Who was he to interfere with the squabbles of siblings? And we see that from this exchange, Jesus found an opportunity to speak of possessions. "Take care to guard against all greed, for though one may be rich, one's life does not consist of possessions." Jesus supports his teaching with an illustration. Another of those parables that are found only in Luke. It is a simple story about a rich man who, blessed by God with a good harvest, ironically forgot God and thought of a future where he would build larger barns, then enjoy a life of pleasure. But the story ends tragically, for he would meet his doom that very night. It may count as a case of the familiar proverb of counting the chickens before they hatch. The parable of Jesus is most tragic because it sees the end of the life of the man who dreamt of riches. Many have aptly entitled the story as the parable of the rich fool. Indeed, for Luke uses the word fool. In Greek, it is aphron, which was how God called the man in the story. We see folly in placing one's trust in riches. Where did the rich fool go wrong? Ano ba yung pagkakamali niya? Parang mayaman siya. And is that a fault? Where did he go wrong? When he realized the abundance of the harvest, he immediately thought of a bigger place to store it. "What shall I do? For I do not have space to store my harvest." And it's a valid worry. It smacks of a worried heart but an attitude that we can understand. After all, we are against wastage. Ayaw nating masayang yung mga perishable. The words that follow are the ones that are disturbing. This is what I shall do. I shall tear down my barns and build larger ones. There I shall store all my grain and other goods. And I shall say to myself, now as for you, you have so many good things, stored up for many years. And the larger barns are indeed necessary for the grain and the other goods. But the man tells himself that because of to follow, living a life of pleasure, the man looked only at himself. There was never a word about sharing the abundant harvest with others. It was all about I, me, myself. Neither did he thank God for the blessing that has come upon him. The parable affirms our belief that death will separate us from material wealth. And this wealth becomes especially futile, useless, when death comes so soon and unexpectedly. The question that God posed would indeed be painful for the man and anyone who considers material wealth the most important thing. The things you have prepared, to whom will they belong? Jesus concludes the parable by saying that those who store up treasures for themselves but are not rich toward God will have the same plight as that of the rich fool. How is it to be rich toward God, or in the eyes of God, or in what matters to God? We become rich in this way when God is part of everything we do and in everything we have. The man in the parable was rich materially, but impoverished. Why? Because God was absent, or better, he made God absent. What a contrast this is to the Lord's Prayer, the prayer taught by Jesus. When Jesus taught his disciples to pray, he began with the praise of God and followed it with an expression of dependence on him for daily bread. When we turn our gaze to God and to our neighbor, we will look less into material possessions and thus avoid greed. Now, since he looked only at himself, the rich fool missed God and others. It was earlier also during his journey to Jerusalem that Jesus was asked by a scholar of the law as to what he should do in order. And this brings Jesus' words in our gospel passage that our life, quote unquote, does not consist of possessions. And we ask ourselves these questions. What do I consider as my possessions and treasures in this life? Do these lead me closer to the Lord, or do they lead me away from Him? And another question, what is the material possession or anything similar like relationships and securities from which I find hard to detach? What am I doing about it? Dear friends, since it has been days since I gave my good morning talk, I'd like to give greetings to those who celebrated their birthdays in the past days. In particular, on October 14, the first of the series of days, I was not able to give the good morning talk. It was the birthday of Tita Lydia Fernandez, okay, and Doc Lenny, our dentist, Doc Lenny Caspillo. And belated happy birthday to you both. And on October 15, among our lay mission partners, it was the birthday of Sir George Arrieta. He was a Bosconian here, as a college student, and then he is now among the professors in the college department, teaching IT. And belated happy birthday, Sir George. More birthdays to come, and glorious ones. And also, I continue inviting you to take part in our family rosary every 6:30 in the evening. congratulations to those who have led the Rosary, and especially in the past days. And yesterday evening, it was very beautiful to have our dear kinder pupils until grade 3. So our students our little ones in the grade school department, alongside their class advisors and their teachers. We thank them. It was so beautiful listening to the voices of our little ones. So I invite you again this evening and for the rest of the evenings of October, 6:30 in the evening at the website of Don Bosco Canlubang. And I wish you all the best, and may God bless us all.